Hello, this is Business Daily with me, Elizabeth Hotson, and on today's programme we're looking at the importance of a good night's sleep. There are profound economic implications for a sleep-deprived workforce, and although money can't solve the problem, it can certainly help.
We haven't found a way to buy sleep with money, but what we can do is buy things that protect our sleep, things like control over our time. We can buy things like maybe a shorter commute.
We'll also be hearing why an obscure form of weather forecast has some of us nodding off.
Viking, North Utsira, South Utsira, northwesterly 4 to 6 becoming cyclonic 5 to 7 later, perhaps gale 8 later in Viking, snow showers, good, occasionally poor.
That's all coming up on Business Daily from the BBC. It's 3 a.m. and I've just woken up for the second time tonight. I've got a big day tomorrow and I'm hoping I'll be able to get back to sleep, because if I don't, I'm just not going to be able to function. And that means my work will suffer, which is also bad for my employers, because lack of sleep isn't just frustrating for individuals, it's bad for the economy. The research organisation Rand Corporation found that the US economy loses over $400 billion a year due to the impact of sleep deprivation on worker productivity. And a recent study by the medical journal PLOS found that your health will also suffer if you don't get enough sleep. And this is particularly true as you get older. Participants in the study, who were around 50 years old and slept 5 hours or less, had a 30% greater risk of developing multiple ailments than those who slept 7 hours, and there was also an increased risk of chronic disease. Now, it's tempting to think of sleep problems as a modern phenomenon, born of smartphone addiction and the 24-hour flicker of technology. But whilst these things probably don't help, a good night's sleep has been an elusive goal for some people for millennia. And as we'll find out in the programme, there are a number of factors at play, including socioeconomic status, age and gender. And to start us on that journey, I enlisted the help of Sanjit Tudor, Director of Audiences at the Museum of the Home in London. The exhibits take the form of rooms designed and furnished in the styles of a particular period of time.
First up, we're going through to the 1630 parlour. This, as you can probably see with the extravagant wood panelling, is probably almost, in fact it's definitely, a home of the merchant middle class, I'd say. There's some beautifully carved dark wood furniture, several chairs and stools. But what you also see, and this is where the notion of sleep comes in, is a washing line that's strung up with all the washing hanging out on it. This is the bedding of the household being cleaned, and Caroline, the mistress of the house, awoke her female servants at 2 o'clock in the morning to begin the laborious process of cleaning the laundry.
What really strikes me, though, is that the female servants are getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, having done night shifts and also shifts that would start at 3 or 4, I know what that does to my body clock and my psychology and my general feeling about work. I don't know, if I was getting up at 2 in the morning, how productive I would be, how efficient I would be, because I'm guessing the servants wouldn't be sleeping in comfy 4-poster beds either.
Far from it. Their accommodation would be very, very basic, probably 2 to a cot, in fact. And, woe betide sleeping next to somebody who snores, you're done for, really.
Sanjit may have been talking about the 1630s, but the idea that your wealth and your place in society can shape your quality of sleep is true in the present day. Michael Grandner is a grandee in the world of sleep research, and amongst his many titles is a director of the Sleep and Health Research Programme at the University of Arizona. His research has found that individuals with higher socioeconomic status and education levels sleep better than those of lower socioeconomic status.
How does sleep relate to your job, your income, your socioeconomic status? Well, we yet haven't found a way to buy sleep with money. We can't do that. But what we can do is buy things that protect our sleep, things like control over our time. We can buy things like maybe a shorter commute, maybe a quieter neighborhood that we can live in. Maybe we can buy central air conditioning or heating, or we can buy a larger house where everyone's not sleeping in the same room and moving around. Maybe we can buy access to health care so that our health issues aren't keeping us up at night in pain, or our bed partner's health issues aren't keeping us up at night. Although you can't buy sleep, you can buy things that protect sleep.
And in fact, Michael's research shows that 26% of individuals earning less than $10,000 a year reported sleep problems, whereas only 8% of those earning $75,000 a year or more reported sleep problems. And participants who had college degrees slept better than those who didn't finish high school. But that's not the whole picture. The way you perceive sleep can also have an impact on how much you get. You might be one of those people who see sleep as a waste of time, as something that interrupts more important pursuits like making money. But Michael argues that this logic is ultimately flawed, because the less sleep you get, the less productive you are, and presumably the less capable you are of making that money.
People who make more money also tend to work more hours, which also gets in the way of sleep. They can be under high amounts of stress. They can devalue sleep. We live in a society where sleep is often seen as an unproductive use of time. And in the post-industrial Western world, there is nothing worse than an unproductive use of time. And because of our industriousness, we tend to see sleep as downtime, as rest, and a sign of weakness, or just a sign of a lack of forward movement. And really, that's not true. Sleep is very much part of that forward movement. And we actually see that people who are sleeping better are more productive, are more effective. They actually get more done, not less.
Sleep, or the lack of it, can also be determined by other factors, such as gender. We'll get some more insights from Michael a bit later on, but first, here's Sanjit Tudor showing me around a parlour from 1745 and setting out why historically, if you were poor and a woman, sleep could in itself be a perilous activity.
It's a warm spring morning in London, and Elizabeth, one of the household's 6 domestic servants, has sat down and is taking a short break from her duties. But she has accidentally fallen asleep in her chair. Elizabeth has definitely had trouble sleeping the last few weeks because her bedroom is in the damp, cold basement, and the new maid, with whom she has to share a bed, is a prolific snorer. And Elizabeth has to scrub basically all of the fireplaces in the house, so she's going to face the householder's wrath if she doesn't get on with it.
So she's fallen asleep on the job. We can see that there are kind of the fire's ashes are scattered sort of beneath the hearth. Things are looking a mess. The clock's just struck 4. Sleep deprivation is then a very, very serious thing because she could be out of the house.
Absolutely. And also, let's not forget, the status of women servants at that time was not a good place to be for many women. And if you were at all sort of asleep and the master of the house was feeling amorous, you were vulnerable. And that's quite a dangerous position to be in. People weren't treated with the respect that they deserved necessarily in those days. And the idea of ownership of objects to some extent also extended to people. It's definitely problematic. And I think the concept of people working and in particular domestic labour being something that was very much carried out by women. And so we start to begin to explore perhaps the beginnings of an idea of the iniquities of sleep and how that can sometimes be gendered.
And those gendered inequalities are still apparent, but perhaps for different reasons in the 21st century. Michael Grandner found that women, especially but not exclusively between the ages of 40 to 60, had more sleep problems than men of a similar age, for example.
There's this intersection between biological factors and social factors that can sometimes create sleep problems. Women between, say 40 and 60, the obvious thing to discuss in there is menopause, and menopause can create sleep disruptions biologically. But at the same time, in our society right now, this is also a key time for a lot of social things going on in terms of work, in terms of balancing family, in terms of balancing caregiving roles. All kinds of things like this are going on that might be interfering with sleep. And actually, if you look at fatigue levels, you actually see even higher rates of fatigue in the women who are in their 20s and early 30s. But you don't see that in men. You do see higher rates in men who are younger too, but not to the degree you see in women. Is it that women are more willing to admit fatigue, or is it that women are just more stressed in those years because they're still bearing the brunt of childcare and starting families and things while also trying to maintain careers?
I think another interesting element of the report was that actually one of the groups that most suffer from sleep deprivation are 16 to 24-year-olds. Now, is that because they're going out all the time?
Possibly. You have different social pressures on sleep as you progress through life in different stages. So what's interesting when we're younger, where our biological night is can change. Anyone with small kids know they wake up really early in the morning with no problem. Small kids are early risers. It's not unusual to have a toddler awake at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then it drifts later and later. Then they're a teenager, and getting them up before 7, 8 o'clock in the morning is very difficult because where their biological night was shifted. To a 4-year-old, 7 o'clock might as well be midnight. But to an 18-year-old, midnight may as well be 7 o'clock. You see this in cultures going back as far back as we can document, that younger people like staying up later, especially teenagers and young adults, because there's this biological drive to, plus all the older people who tell them not to do stuff are in bed. So there's this whole social thing going on. But then what we do is we sort of impose our societal rules that you have to get up early to go to work, for example, or go to school. And so now we've delayed the onset of sleep biologically and socially, but then at the same time, socially, we've constrained their sleep opportunity by saying, if you don't get up in time for work, you're not going to succeed. And so we limit the amount of time that they can sleep. And so that's the issue, I think, that happens with younger people. It's not necessarily that they're out partying and drinking. It's that they're out partying and drinking because the idea of being up later and socializing is actually developmentally appropriate.
So then, it seems that age, gender and socioeconomic status all play a role in how we sleep and for how long. And some of these factors are beyond our control. But there are things you can do to get a better night's sleep, and one of these is to tap into your natural body clock.
My name is Russell Foster. I'm Professor of Circadian Neuroscience and Director of the Sleep and Circadian Neuroscience Institute, and also author of a new book called Lifetime, The New Science of the Body Clock and How It Can Revolutionize Your Sleep and Health.
Why are circadian rhythms important, and what exactly are they?
You can think of circadian rhythms as being an internal representation of a day. And they are critically important because, of course, we live on a planet that revolves once every 24 hours. And there are fundamental differences in light and dark and temperature and what we can do. And what our circadian clock and our circadian system can do is fine-tune our biology in advance of those changed conditions. If you think about it, our biology needs the right stuff at the right concentration, at the right tissues and organs, at the right time of day. And what the circadian system does is provide this time structure, this temporal structure that allows all of our biology to work optimally. And indeed, without a circadian system, then everything, including our sleep-wake cycle, falls into chaos.
In general, if people have trouble sleeping, is there any way they can, trick their circadian rhythms or adapt them to help them sleep?
There are a number of things that we can do naturally to improve our sleep. So during the day, for example, get morning light. That, for 90% of us, will stabilize the circadian system, lock the circadian clock onto the external world, and therefore stabilize the sleep-wake cycle. So morning light is really important. Also during the day, if you need to nap, then try not to make it longer than 20 minutes and try not to do it too close to bedtime, because that will push back the sleep pressure pressure, which means it'll be more difficult to get to sleep that night. And a really key thing is to step back from the pressures of the day. So many people don't have a sleep problem, they have an anxiety problem. And it's difficult either to get to sleep, and if they should wake up, then it's difficult to get back to sleep. And so do what works for you, whether it be mindfulness or some other relaxation technique, yoga, reading your favourite novel, something that works ideally for you.
I often have trouble sleeping, and back in the summer I had a particularly bad patch, so I'm willing to try whatever it takes to make myself nod off, as long as it's legal, of course. So I turn to you, dear listeners, to get some tips, and here's a small selection of what you suggested.
I have experienced bouts of insomnia in the past that go on for weeks at a time. My tip for falling asleep is to get an acupressure mat. They're basically yoga mats with small plastic spikes on that are used for relaxation. And although some have scary names like bed of nails, don't let that put you off. I find that lying on one for 20 to 30 minutes before bed just sends me right off to sleep. And I'd really urge anybody who struggles to relax to try one out.
I have a lot of trouble sleeping. However, I own a small skincare company, and I came up with my own sleep spray, which has lavender, bergamot, frankincense, all very good oils to help relax. I won't say it's a miracle cure, it doesn't work every night, but I do find it very helpful just to get me into the right zone and to feel more relaxed.
One of my go-tos is an old British classic of the shipping forecast.
There are warnings of gales in Dover, White, Portland, Plymouth, Biscay, Fitzroy, Seoul, Farnborough.
The recording of the weather forecast for the ships around the British Isles is monotonous and it's very calming. I think it transports you out of the bed into the wonderful ocean and just world away from worrying about getting to sleep. It means absolutely nothing. You have no idea what he's referring to or what any of those words mean or any of the numbers.
Viking, North Utsira, South Utsira, northwesterly 4 to 6, becoming cyclonic 5 to 7.
It doesn't mean anything to you if you don't work in the shipping world or the nautical world, but it's very calming and soothing, and it sort of just puts you into a nice wave mode, I think, calm waves.
Dogger, Fisher, northwest 4 to 6, becoming cyclonic 3 to 5 for a time, snow showers.
The shipping forecast is definitely making me feel more relaxed, but if you're suffering from chronic insomnia, you should really go and see your doctor. Well, that's all from me, Elizabeth Hobson, and Business Daily will be back again soon.